We interrupt this program to bring you a special bulletin.
This is a broadcast interruption. We normally talk about movies here on The Average, but there's a TV show airing right now that captured my attention, and I needed to talk about it. I wanted to get some stuff out, interact with you people out there who are listening. I have a guest joining me today. You want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really, really excited. I'm very, very excited about the new season of True Detective. I've watched all of the other seasons a few times over, so I have a bunch of ideas about what might be coming up and whatnot. So just really, really excited to talk about it.
Awesome. Yeah, you actually, okay, so you're a bigger fan than I am because I've seen season 1 multiple times. I loved season 1.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite seasons of television, period. It's up there with Dexter season 4 for me. But seasons 2 and 3, I could not get into. I tried. I think I made it like 3 or 4 episodes into season 2, and I was done after episode 1 on season 3. So maybe those are something I need to go back and revisit.
I highly recommend it. I felt the same way. Like season 1, amazing. I mean, nothing gets better than Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson in that.
Right.
But season 2, I really enjoyed it after like watching it all the way through. I think waiting week to week, I was kind of wanting more. I also expected it to be as good as season 1, which I don't know if there's ever going to be another TV show that's that good. But yeah, highly recommend.
Yeah. And I think in season 2, I don't know, maybe I wasn't paying attention. I thought a character like survived a shotgun blast to the chest. And that's when I was like, I don't know about this. But we're here to talk about season 4 because premiere episode kicks off, and I feel like it's a back to form, true to form episode where it felt more like season 1 than any of the others, at least for me. I'm not dealing with crazy out there time jumps.
Right. Yep.
And storyline is it's growing, but it's pretty tight, pretty coherent. So different than a normal episode of The Average, we're not going to go through our score. We're not going to break it down piece by piece and talk about the music or the script or whatever. We're going to go scene by scene. We're going to start at the beginning of this episode, talk our way through it, what we think is going on, where we think the season's headed, what we liked, maybe what we didn't. All right. So we're going to try to keep this nice and short. All right. So starting off, this season takes place in Alaska, December 17th. So we're headed into Christmas. A man is hunting caribou during the last day of solstice. As the sun sets, the entire herd of caribou suddenly becomes erratic and leaps off a cliff. He kind of follows down to where that cliff was to see like what the heck happened. And all we see are his eyes go wide and scene change.
Yeah. Who was that guy? That's what I want to know.
Yes. So same. And I also want to, like, it's beautiful. I want to know how much of this is real.
Right.
I want to know how much is filmed in Alaska, how much is created. It takes place in the fictional town of Ennis, which is, it seems to me to be based on a real Alaskan city, not called Ennis. I couldn't pronounce the name, but only accessible by plane, snow all the time. It seems to be like there are cities like this, and I think that's awesome that we're kind of highlighting that. But
yeah, definitely. I love that so much. It's like, I think they were saying it's like 150 miles north of the Arctic Circle, right? So it's like way out there just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So I was looking it up because I was curious about it. And the city, I am going to have to pull it up now. The city in Alaska is very similar to what we have here, where it's kind of a mix of the indigenous natives and scientists. So it's pretty cool that they're kind of, while they're not calling it that exact town, basing it off of that.
Right, just like an implication.
So the northernmost city of Alaska is, man, I cannot pronounce it because it's in the native language, which is the same group of people from this show. It's Utqiagvik.
Oh yeah, no shot on pronouncing that either.
Yeah. So that's the city. I did a Google Maps of it. It's just pretty cool. Pretty cool to like walk the streets on Google Maps and see. But anyways, so after those caribou jump off the cliff, we cut to the Salal Arctic Research Station. A team of scientists are going about their daily routines. We're opening with this guy kind of cooking in the kitchen. It almost looks like he's making an Instagram video of the event. And right over his shoulder, you can kind of see one of the other scientists at the station. He's having like a standing seizure. He's shaking, convulsing. And it takes a second for the guy we're watching to notice. And then he turns around and he just goes, "She's awake."
Yeah, what was with that? It like kind of gave me maybe 28 days later kind of zombie vibes almost when he was shaking, you know?
It gave me chills. I loved it. And then the lights start flickering in the station. The one thing I noticed, I think we've both seen this at least twice now. I noticed the "she's awake" repeating more the second time. It's dropped in throughout. And I just want to know, who is she? Who are they talking about? Because there's an obvious thread that we're going to get to. I don't think that's her.
Yeah, so, it's interesting. I'm really excited to find out who that is for sure.
Yeah. So 3 days later. Yeah. We also, is it this scene or is it later? But we kind of see some shadows moving like across doorways. I think it happens a couple times.
It's like it's shortly after this when that guy's dropping off the stuff. I think there's supplies.
Okay, yes. Yep, that's right. So it's 3 days later, a delivery man arrives at the station with food. He's knocking on the door. He's trying to get in. No one's there. But he inspects the area and discovers a severed tongue. So after handling, so then we're going to cut to Callie Reese's character, Evangeline Navarro, who I love. I did not love her at first, I'll be honest. My opinions totally changed later. We'll get to that more. After handling an assault case at a factory, Alaska State Trooper Evangeline Navarro is recalled to the police station in the town of Ennis, near the research station. So we're kind of skipping. There's this little scene there where she confronts an abusive, is it husband? Is it boyfriend? I'm not sure they ever say.
That's what I was wondering. All we know so far, I think, is that they were living together at one point, and then she moved out of the house, and that's why that guy kind of freaked out, and then moved in with her coworker, who hit that guy with the bucket.
Yeah, and it's kind of a cool scene to see Trooper Navarro's interaction with the locals, but it's also just a little scene that helps build the reality of this city that we're in, this town that we're in, just these interactions with the people, how we immediately feel in this scene that there's a history there, that these people don't just exist in this show, they exist outside of it as well.
Yeah, it definitely gives off like small town vibes, very harsh working environments would be my guess.
Yeah. It looked like a fish something. Was that right?
Are you talking about the factory that they were in?
Yeah. Is it some kind of fish related with fishing? I wasn't sure.
I was thinking that it was like maybe some type of like butcher plant or something, but okay. I could be off base.
Because she mentioned cutting off her fingers.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So, yeah. But Trooper Navarro leaves this situation, called back to the police station, where we meet Jodie Foster's character, Liz Danvers. So she is the Ennis City chief of police. There's this history there between Trooper Navarro and Liz Danvers, or Chief Danvers. We don't exactly know what that is, but it kind of, it's a fun for lack of a better term, tension right away. It's a little bit like, man, what happened between these two?
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of wondering that too. I was hoping they would dive in a little bit more, but I guess we're just going to have to wait. But there's definitely history there.
Yes. And it's just another one of those like attention to detail things to the script that I really appreciate as far as creating this lived in kind of environment and city. And I love that. Danvers is at the research station where her colleague Peter Pryor, actually, I think I'm messing up here. Sorry. I think we meet Danvers first and then they come together. So we see Trooper Navarro deal with the domestic abuse situation. Then we go to Danvers at the research station.
That's right. And she's like already there, Trooper Navarro, right? And she just comes out of the hallway.
Yes.
That was a fun interaction.
Yeah. But at the research station, Danvers starts talking to Peter Pryor, played by Finn Bennett. He's a young police officer. He obviously arrived at the research station before her. And during this whole scene, we're getting Twist and Shout from the Beatles playing obnoxiously loud, but it's the scene from Ferris Bueller where he's like dancing in the parade. And there was part of me that thought there might be some kind of significance in that because it was so loud and so prevalent for such a big part of the scene. And I could be totally unrelated to anything in the story, but I just immediate was like, I wonder if there are parallels to Ferris Bueller going on in this story. I don't know, somebody saying they're doing one thing, but then, it
definitely wouldn't surprise me. I mean, anything with True Detective, like it all kind of comes together at some point. So there's probably Easter eggs all over the place like that.
Oh, we're going to get to an Easter egg later. Where Danvers asking questions basically about the scene where everybody was at, but she asks one about what the station does and where the funding comes from, which I thought were two really good questions.
Yeah.
And neither one of them got very good answers in this scene.
I agree with that. Yeah. I was like, more information, please.
Yeah. The one guy responds when she asks what the station research is, and he responds and says something about the meaning of life or the source of life.
Looking for the origin of life. Yeah.
Yes, that's the one. Looking for the origin of life. And I'm like, is that really? Because he kind of sounded on mysticism when he said it. Like he didn't really believe that's what they were doing.
Yeah. Because they're there like year round, I guess. I think that they were saying that in that scene too. Like they're just there for years and years and they just live like monks kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. Just set up. Almost made me think of The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Just this research group out in the Arctic. So
that was a good movie.
Yes, I definitely think there's some things that they're touching on here. There's a brief kind of might be researching climate, might be researching microbiology. It's never really nailed down. And that's something we might never get an answer to just because. But I feel like we're going to, honestly. I feel like there's a reason.
It was vague, but yeah, it's got to tie in somewhere.
Yes. So they're investigating the research station where the scientist disappeared, and all that was left was a severed tongue, which we mentioned the delivery guy discovered, and the words "We are all dead" written on a dry erase board. Large. Danvers sees it kind of just.
I think it was that same whiteboard that the scientist was using earlier in the episode, which is kind of interesting, which makes me think that maybe there was like some type of interaction there in that room, but I'm not sure. We'll see.
That just gave me chills. Like there's just a little bit more there. I'm pausing for a second. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay. Yeah. So Danvers mentions the tongue again, but she instructs the young Peter Pryor. His father is also a detective on the force, and his father is an interesting character. But she instructs the father, Hank Pryor, to go back and check local corpses for missing tongues. And this, I think, is where we get Trooper Navarro coming in.
Yeah.
So she wants to be involved in the case, even though she was demoted, because the missing tongue is related, she believes, is related to a case she worked years ago.
Right. Yeah, they definitely have some type of history for sure. And I really want to know like more about the tongue and why that's there. And like, I don't know, the people are missing. Like it's just a very weird situation to be in, especially for Jodie Foster in this, who is, Liz Danvers.
Yes. Jodie Foster's character. Yeah. So there's that interesting interaction. Danvers is playing it off as like, this is not related. The case is not related. You know, you have no part in this. You were demoted. And Trooper Navarro is saying, no, this was the case. Ann Kotok, I think is how they said her name. Ann Kotok. While they're having this interaction, they're still at was it the police station that they had this interaction later?
I believe so, yeah.
I'm muddy on these things, and I just watched it today.
It happens. I was rewatching some of it earlier. I was like, I'm
definitely going to have to rewatch 2 again.
Yeah.
Danvers is forced to leave. She gets a call. This is another scene that like keeps giving us, there's a history here. There's a lot going on with these characters that we don't know yet. And honestly, I'm hoping we don't get all the answers. One of the things that really bothers me with modern television, even some older movies, is where like we're setting up all these stories of history of these characters that, you know, Danvers is supposedly 60 in this show, and she has 60 years of history. They don't all need to come to a climax with the show. It's okay for me to have some issues left unresolved, and I'm hoping some of these things that we're getting hints of are left kind of like, hey, their story continues past the conclusion of this mystery.
Right.
But she gets a call, really forceful call, that I think it's from a teacher or a mother. It wasn't clearly explained, but Danvers is forced to leave because her teenage stepdaughter got in trouble for making a sex tape with her girlfriend. So very modern issue. As she scolds her while driving, there's kind of hints during this argument about that past that I mentioned. There's something between them that it becomes clear right away, like, where's Dad? Yeah. I was thinking that in this moment. I think she even says something about like, Dad would understand, or you don't have to be Dad, or something like that in this moment. But then they're distracted by a car crash as a drunk driver drives through an intersection. This is, again, one of those things that it's like, hey, it's a small town in Alaska. This is interesting. But it's also one of those, like, will this have significance later? I'm not sure. You know, will this play out later? I think it's going to be our reveal into more of Danvers. So after that car crash, she steps out of the car. She's police chief. She steps out to deal with the lady who crashed. She's drunk. She's crying at the wheel. But there's this really cool shot, and I loved it because it was just quick. It was quick, gave us enough to pique our interest, and then moved on. She steps out onto broken glass, and that sound triggers a memory, and we see it's like a half a second shot, maybe less, of her flashing back to another crash. And that's it. That's all we get.
Yeah. Another thing about that scene that I really enjoyed, you might be about to get to it, but I really enjoyed the neighbor who opened the window and was like, "Oh, is that blah 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 again?"
Yes. Her name's Stacy Chalmers, but yeah.
Yeah.
Is that Stacy Chalmers?
Yeah, like it's just a known thing.
Yep, it's just one of those little like small
Watch out for
town.
Stacy.
Yeah, everybody knows who the drunk lady is driving through town.
Yeah.
This is another just randomly came to me as we're talking about that. It is really hard and it's really cool at the same time to figure out what is happening at night, because they are in the northern Alaska.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying right now. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're
it's
good.
So good.
Part
It's
of the
like,
backdrop of the show is that like it opens with that guy hunting and it says the final sunset of the year, and it'll be like day 4 of night when it changes scenes or whatever. And so you're watching this whole time and I'm like, everything's happening at night. And then you remember, oh yeah, no, it's night all the time.
yeah, I love it because it just provides like this new element to the show that like maybe we've seen in other movies or something, but this one you just can't tell, like they could have just eaten breakfast and then something's happening, or like this is actually nighttime, or is it like really early in the morning? You don't know. Like,
Yes.
it's great.
It's super cool. There's like Trooper Navarro, we'll get to it later, but I can talk about it now because it's right after this car crash scene. Trooper Navarro meets with the brother of the girl who was murdered years ago. And she's in his house and they're just having this conversation, but she asks he was like, do you want something to drink? And she says water. And he goes, the water's gone bad. Have a beer or something. And it's one of those things where you don't know if it's 7 a.m., if it's noon, because she reacts really weirdly to the beer. But
this guy could have just been doing night shift.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It's very one of those things that being at night, the show kind of throws you off in your understanding of where everything is. But she's talking to the brother of Anne, the girl who was murdered. His name's Ryan. Eventually, their conversation gets to he believes she believes in God, but she says that he has left us or something like that. It's kind of a chilling line.
Yeah, it makes you want her to explain a little bit more, but she just doesn't really.
Yeah, it's like that's the end of it. And the other really cool thing I loved in this scene, occasionally I get on these weird like YouTube trips and I watch this guy who toured different parts of the United States, and he would go to like the most poverty-ridden city or the city with the highest crime or whatever, and he would just do like street tours and he would go talk to people. And I was like, that's super cool. I might be a little too scared to do that myself in certain places, but one of the places he went was a remote fishing village in Alaska. And one of the things I remember being talked about was how they stockpile goods, that things like Monster energy drinks or even toilet paper, pop of any kind, when it arrives, because it has to be flown in, when it arrives, they will jack up the prices and that stuff sells out day one. But
supply and demand.
Yes. And it's all stockpiled. And so I noticed in the scene when she's sitting in this very humble home, they have stockpiled cans of pop. They have stockpiled cans of beer. They have stockpiled cans of beans. And it was just another thing that made me like, oh, I love this show already because of the attention to detail. They didn't just say, hey, we're going to do a remote town in Alaska. They said that, and then they followed through with what those details are as far as stockpiling goods necessary for life.
Yeah, absolutely. I also liked that house specifically that you're talking about, because it's almost, I think it's like a room more than it is like an apartment.
Yes, it looks like a dorm room.
Yeah, it does. Like there's probably just not a whole lot of places to live over there.
It made me wonder. He's a miner, and it made me wonder if the mining community there lives in apartment dorm type situation.
Oh yeah, probably. That's a good idea.
So that was something I just wondered. Yeah, we just don't know for sure. She ends up leaving pretty quickly after that discussion about God, because she got a call from another police officer. She rushes to the scene, and it is her sister who has barricaded herself inside of a room. We get a really kind of touching moment. Her sister's struggling with these mental health issues. She doesn't want to be medicated, but she wants help. She doesn't trust the doctors, but she wants to get better, is what I got from the scene.
That's what I got too. Yeah,
Okay.
It sounds like she has like some type of history with like making these decisions.
Yes,
or
and
those actions.
There was a little hint about their mother as well, some kind of shared experience that revolved around their mother. I can't remember if she said something about like, I don't want to be our mother or something like that.
I think she said, I'm not mom.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, I hope they go into more detail with that as well. Yes.
So then we cut again. Next cut, we cut to Rose and Ingenue. I am not quite sure what her name was. Played by Fiona Shaw, who we don't know who she is really at this point. She's just an older lady that we see. I think she's washing dishes at this time. And this ghostly image appears outside her window. And it's a man, like it's super bizarre because it's just a man standing in the Alaskan snow, wind blowing. He's just got like long pajamas on, barefoot, and he's just standing there.
Right. I remember this scene now. She's also like gutting a wolf, it looked like.
Yeah, that's it. She's not in the kitchen. She's gutting a wolf. Yeah. That was it. She's preparing food.
Yeah, and she's like, what do you want? And you just look at this person and you're like, man, is that normal?
Yeah.
That's a thought I had. I was like, I don't know if this is like just a regular person that's just a part of the town or what's going on, but it's weird behavior.
She seems almost unfazed by it.
Yeah.
She's just like, Travis. That's his name. It's Travis. And she's just like, hey, Travis. And you're just like, is this like the town nut or what is going on? But it definitely has that ghostly feeling. We cut from that. Danvers puts... This is one of the first moments that I wasn't a big fan of Danvers. We meet Peter. Peter has a wife. Peter's the young police officer, has a wife and a kid. We meet that briefly, and we get the impression that his work life as a police officer is invading his personal life. And this is a moment when you kind of start to question Danvers and if she is the hero of the story or not. Or just different, got her own demons. But she calls Peter and says, I need you to get the Ann Kotok files from your father's house, who I totally skipped over when they were arresting the drunk driver. Danvers asked the father, I need those files. And he was like, I don't think I have them.
Yeah, he was like really standoffish about it. Like they also have some weird kind of history too. Like he's like very aggro.
And why is he... Like, she was like, no, you took a bunch of files home. I need them. And he's got a bunch of files home. When Peter goes in there, is rifling through everything, there's a bunch of files there. So why is he denying having this one that...
It's also kind of like, why did he have the files in the first place?
Yeah. It's one of those things that I was willing to brush off as like small town police officers. They might not have had room. And so like, it's probably definitely not up to code or legal to just store files at your house. But I don't know in Alaska when you can only get there by plane what the solution is. But that's something I was ready to, okay, I can turn a blind eye kind of. but his behavior about it makes it very suspicious.
I agree with that 100% for sure. It's very suspicious. It's kind of like, I understand maybe taking your work home with you, like you're saying, but you're now not wanting to bring it back.
Yes,
what's going on?
Why are you hanging on to that? So Danvers is still at this point denying the connection of the case to Anne's, but she's very suspicious. So that is why she sends Peter to go get those files. Who there's that super tense scene where he's like, "Oh, Dad, I just need to go get this photo out of the room," and he's rifling through everything. His dad's in the kitchen. You want a beer, whatever, talking. And he, in order to hide the fact that he's stealing these files from his father, he opens the window and drops them outside. And right as he turns around, his father's standing in the door. And I was just like, oh my God. Like,
yeah, it was uncanny for sure.
It was great tension. It was fantastic. And we're 100% sure that the father didn't see him. Like, was the father letting him get away with this to find out? It
could have just been a really close call, but I don't know.
Yes, it was right on that line. We then find out that Navarro, I think I mentioned earlier, Navarro was the first person on the scene of Anne's murder. And her tongue was severed, which is why Navarro believes that this case is connected. The weapon was never found. She was stabbed, was it 37 times? Something like that. Like,
it was 32.
32. Huge number of times. Is that an Easter egg?
Oh, man, maybe.
Okay. I didn't know if you did.
I'm not sure. I just remember that scene specifically because the way they were describing it, I was like, I can't unhear this, and it sounds just horrible what happened to that person.
Yes. And it seems like from the flashbacks that she was almost found in a shipping container during the rainy season. It just looks like a miserable time. Navarro is really upset about it because I'm not sure she believes it was race related. I think in her mind, she knows it was race related. And we as viewers still don't know. Ann Kotak was one of the local indigenous women. And so is Navarro. So we're still trying to discover what's going on. The case was never solved. And I think that's where some of the beef between Danvers and Navarro is. They have this back and forth about not solving the case because she was indigenous, and Danvers says, well, you were the one on the case, so don't blame me.
Right. Yeah.
So that was an interesting exchange.
It definitely was. Like thinking back on it in that moment when they're just having that exchange in general, just trying to kind of uncover what we're eventually going to find out, I'm assuming. But they're just kind of dialing it back to what we were talking about before, just that tension and how it's just kind of building over time right now. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
Yes. So then we cut to later, and Navarro it looks like she's leaving. It's not the local liquor store. I noticed that on second watch. They don't have a liquor store. She's walking out with a big case of Budweiser. And I noticed on the sign, it says liquor is city mandated or state mandated. So
oh yeah, what was that about?
I think it was almost like a ration. They were only allowed to take this much. So she was going to pick up her portion. So kind of what I talked about stockpiling. It was like, hey, we got a shipment in, everybody's allowed 2 cases or whatever. And so that's kind of how I took it.
Oh, well, yeah, you were saying that about the guy, the brother of the missing woman, and he was like, it's like my last 2 beers of my ration when he opened his fridge. So, yeah, that makes sense.
I totally forgot about that. So there we go. Connection confirmed. I really like this scene. she hears the guy from the opening, the domestic abuse case. She hears that guy talking trash to other men about his wife and about her. And I was really hoping that she would not get in a physical altercation with him. I was really hoping they would avoid that. And instead she did I'm not sure it'd be passive aggressive or what, but she poured beer directly in his gas tank. And
I think it was Bailey's, but yeah, it was.
Oh yeah, it was Bailey's.
Sneaky.
That's right.
It was sneaky for sure. I was thinking that she was going to slash his tires when I saw it.
I was kind of thinking that too. I was like, no, not the Bailey's, but I was also like, yeah, I kind of like that move. It's very subtle. He's not going to know till later. Like, I liked it. But this is where we meet Eddie Kavik, who runs Kavik's, which is the local burger spot. He has a bunch of Huskies outside. I like this guy, honestly. He just seems like a nice dude who runs a restaurant.
Yeah, it seems like he would play like magic cards or something.
Yeah,
he's a regular guy.
He seems like a dude I might hang out with, and his burgers look pretty good. So,
right.
There's some kind of weird relationship between these two. They sleep together, and we're not sure if it's just a physical relationship, because they definitely, at least to me, they definitely seem to be, I hate this word, but they definitely seem to be vibing. Like, they definitely seem to be close more than just physically.
Yeah, they have some type of relationship.
Yes.
Like not just one night stands or something. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And we get a little bit of conversation that reveals that Navarro's troubled younger sister works for him. And he mentions that she asks if she's been acting off lately. And he's like, no, not, just calling in a couple times, whatever. And he tries to downplay it, but it kind of upsets her a little bit. It gets to her a little bit, but not crazy. But yeah, so there's definitely that relationship there. Then we flash to Danvers, who, I believe this is the scene you really liked, the polar bear. Is this the scene where she's dreaming about the polar bear?
Was it a dream? I think it was.
Oh no, Navarro's leaving Kavik's.
Yeah, I think she was driving the SUV, and then it's just in the street. And I'm like, man, this place is in the middle of nowhere for real.
This is the wild Alaskan frontier. Yeah, she's just driving down.
Yeah, and it has one eye.
Polar bear with one eye. And that's kind of creepy. It looks really good. I assume it's a CGI polar bear because they're one of the most dangerous creatures on the planet. But it looks fantastic.
It does.
And it's missing one eye. But then we flash to Danvers, who is unable to sleep, and she keeps hearing the voice of a child named Holden, who calls her mommy. So we're getting a little bit more of Danvers here that we don't really know what's going on. A child named Holden might also explain why there's some tension with her stepdaughter currently, because we have not met Holden. We don't know who Holden is. But both of them at about this point in the episode, Danvers and Navarro experience this polar bear with one eye, because Navarro sees it in the street and Danvers has Holden's teddy bear, which is a polar bear with one eye. Right. So it's one of those eerie parallels that's going on.
It's a very interesting tie-in there. Like, I really hope there's some more there, but kind of like you said, I mean, maybe a little mystery is what we need in the show.
Yeah, there's just enough. It's so good because they didn't go, like, even at this point, there's no murder investigation. There's no, like, all we know is some guys are missing, but there's all of these other little threads of these people's lives that are just like, I want to know more about that. They made me interested and they made me care about these characters in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, it was really impressive for sure. Because I was kind of questioning that with the new writer of the show, because they went in a different direction for season 4, but it's been proving to be really, really good. I'm excited.
Yes, her name is Issa Lopez, I believe. This is her first writing and directing credit, which is pretty freaking good. I'll be really curious to see. This is a show the end could make or break it.
Yeah.
I still think so far, if you're still with us, we're 2 episodes in. After episode 2 is when I made the decision that we needed to record this. We're going to bring them to you 1 episode at a time. But after episode 2, because it just got better, I was like, we need to talk about this show. So even if the ending kind of fizzles, I think the beginning is going to be something that I'll come back to again. Definitely.
Yeah.
So,
as long as they don't pull a Game of Thrones or The Witcher type situation, I think we'll be in good shape.
Very true. Very true. So this bear situation prompts Danvers to continue her investigation, finding the connection from the 8 scientists to the missing Anne Kotak. We're going to jump to the outskirts of Venice, where Rose decides she's going to follow Travis,
who is still barefoot in the snow.
Yes. And this was a scene you mentioned you really enjoyed.
I loved this scene that's coming up. I call it the ghost dance. I don't know what else to call it, to be honest. It looked like some type of really, really well done, choreographed, like a magical experience almost. It was interesting.
There's almost, on the production side, there's some frame rate stuff going on where his arms look like ghostly trails moving through the air. It's really interesting. But it's really just a wild, kind of out there scene that doesn't make sense yet. I actually think this happens after Danvers and Peter have the conversation when he brings the files. So
I think you're right.
Yes. So Peter successfully took the Anne files from his father, brought them to Danvers. She's making a meal or cooking something in the kitchen, and they have this good conversation that goes into more of that history of Anne's case. I think that's where we actually learned more about the stabbings and so
I just thought of another thing because you were just talking about this scene, because this is where he eats at Danvers' house. But when he was at his dad's house, his dad also said something about like my supplies getting low. So I think you're right about the rationing of food. Oh, that's another tie in there. I didn't even notice when I watched it, to be honest. That's a really, really good one that you found.
Well, that is also, it's cool that you notice that, because I wonder if this is a subtle thing that's going to play into the climax of the show.
Oh, like the supplies are just going to run low, and then maybe they have to band together or something.
Yeah,
even though they all hate each other.
Yes, people going crazy from hunger. Like I don't know, but
that's a good point.
That is just something that could happen.
I mean, the opening scene was that guy making a sandwich too. There's a lot of food in this show.
There is. I'm getting hungry now. So they have this conversation. It's really, there's not a whole lot more revealed. It's kind of more about the Anne Kotak case. And this is the moment that Danvers does believe that they're connected. I think she got the DNA results back. I'm not sure. But she is believing that they're connected at this point. And so that's when we jump to Rose following the ghostly Travis into the wilderness. We then go to Danvers again, kind of after Peter leaves. She's going into an almost manic investigation mode where she's laying out these photos, looking over the case, all of that.
Classic detective. Like just that scene in general. It's used in like a lot of other TV shows and movies. It's like the thing that you do, like all the information in front of you to start drawing correlations to like the case in your mind. Yes. It was a really cool scene.
And one of my favorite Easter eggs is in this scene.
Oh, really?
Yes, she's laying all these photos out, and then we get an overhead shot of her in the midst of these photos. And the photos are laid out in a unique spiral shape. And this spiral shape, this is where we're going in full spoilers, people. That spiral shape is the same spiral shape seen in season 1.
Yeah. Carcosa. That's immediately what I thought. Yep.
It is the same. It is Colt. Was it Colt? Was that his character?
Oh, it was Rust Cole.
Rust Cole, yes.
Yeah.
Rust Cole sees the spiral shape in crows in the sky. It's also on the murder victim's back in season 1. And then this is the first time we see it in this season. We pan back, and it's purely accidental. It's for us as watchers to see that she has laid these photos out in this unique spiral, much like the crows, where it's kind of abstract objects making the spiral. And this is where we're kind of nearing the end of the episode. She's seeing this. I think is there another encounter with Navarro where they talk about the case?
They do, yeah. It's back at the science, where the scientists are, where they went missing. And I actually referenced this earlier in the pod, but that was when Navarro walks out of the hallway, and then Danvers is like, "Who's out there?" You know?
Yes, that's right.
But yeah, they end up having an interesting interaction because she starts describing the case and who Annie, as she calls her, really is. And she says this one thing that I wrote down. I thought it was just very eerie. She said it was like broken teeth, broken ribs, and then they cut out her tongue. And I was like, that is just crazy to me. I don't know. Just very hateful.
Yes, and sickening. Just...
Yeah.
There's such a undercurrents of trying to silence someone. Broken teeth, cutting out her tongue. Just this person is not allowed to speak. It's disgusting. But it's at this scene Peter calls, because this is how I was like, how did Navarro and Danvers end up there together if Navarro is so demoted? I was a little bit upset at first, but then on rewatch, I was like, oh, they were together when they got this call. I'm going to let it slide. But Danvers and Navarro are kind of having it out about this Ann Kotak case, and they get a call from Peter, and he just says, we got a call. Rose and Janelle called. You got to come see this. And we cut. They land in a helicopter out in the middle of ice. Rose is there, and this is one of those moments that gave me goosebumps. Rose is there, and she greets Trooper Navarro, not Danvers. You catch that?
Yeah.
She totally ignores Danvers, but says hi to Navarro, which I thought was just another small town, hey, we have the people we like and the people we don't like, and Navarro is one of the ones we like. But Navarro,
Danvers is kind of avoided like the plague almost.
Yes, and we'll get into that much more in episode 2. But Navarro says something about how'd you find them? And right. Rose says Travis showed me.
Yeah, who's Travis?
At this point, we're all like, okay, Travis is the ghost. Or we don't know he's a ghost. He's the weird guy standing out in the snow. But Navarro walks a couple of steps back past her, and then Navarro turns around and goes, Rose, Travis is dead. And Rose goes, I know.
Yeah, that was the moment. It's just turned into a ghost story, which is so different from the other seasons.
Yes. Oh, and it was fantastic. It gave me chills again just talking about it. I love when crime has paranormal elements to it. I think it's fantastic. That's one of the things. Season 1, maybe not as much paranormal, but more occult-ish.
It was kind of like in season 1, though, where Rust was talking to Woody Harrelson after he comes back from Alaska. and it's almost like he felt like he was haunted by ghosts in a way, because he came back to finish the case. He's like, and he tried to get Marty's help, and he's like Marty, you have to help me, basically. And then Marty's like, why would I ever help you? If you were drowning, I'd throw you a barbell. And he said, because you owe a debt. And I just loved that scene so much.
Yes. Actually, we're going to get to that. So Rose found something in the ice. It is revealed to be the frozen bodies of the missing scientists. Cut. So back to what you were saying. That's how the episode ends. It finally ends with the bodies that the show started with. And I love that we waited all the way till the end. I love that this is taking a much more linear approach in its storytelling. But
yeah, it's not time jumping, as you said.
Yes. And while there is connections to past cases, we're not like experiencing that through 10-minute long flashbacks. We get glimpses of it, and the mystery of both is going to be revealed to us at the same time. You mentioned Woody Harrelson. And why can't I get his name? I'm spacing on his name.
Oh, Marty in the show.
Marty, yeah. And Russ Cole. There's strong... One of the things I noticed that I did not notice on seasons 2 and 3, producers for this season. Did you happen to see that?
I think it's them, right?
Yes.
I know that's vague, them, but Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson.
Yes, yeah. Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson are producers on this season, which I did not notice on seasons 2 or seasons 3. Between that little production hint and the spiral, I'm wondering if we're going to see at least one of them.
That would blow my mind.
So that's like, we're going to end this last couple of minutes of this talking about what we think is going on from here in the show. There is a part of me that thinks traditionally True Detective has been kind of, I can't think of the word tonight. It's like American Horror Story, where each season is a different case, a different character, your completely different story. Was that anthology series? Yeah,
I think so. I remember like you were saying, like each American Horror Story season was a little bit different. I know we're not talking about that, but one was easily the best.
I am a sucker for 1984, that season, because it was the summer camp slasher. I loved it. But after that, I can't tell you anything else. But there's hints that this might be connected to season 1. That spiral is not accidental.
Definitely not. I think there's some hints to season 1 and season 2 and 3 as well.
Okay.
They're very, very subtle. This is definitely way more prominent. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to see where they're going to go with this, because it almost makes me think that like maybe they're just going to wrap this whole thing up or something. I hope not. I love this show. I'd hate for it to end, but at the same time, like, all good things come to an end, you know? John Wick, 4 chapters, and then it was over.
Yep. I'm with you. I would hate to see this new writer who came in for this season, who's off to a killer start.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the whole reason why there wasn't this podcast episode after episode 1, is because True Detective has kind of had an up and down reputation throughout its seasons, and no one knew if season 4 was going to live up to the good reputation or the bad. And right now it's living up to the good. Many of the reviews are calling it the best season since season 1.
I mean, it's pretty damn good right now. I'll say that for sure.
Yes. And I try not to go in and like read the exact thoughts of what people are saying. I want a kind of general consensus. Is it worth my time? Yes. Okay. And right now everybody's praising this, and I see why. I'm loving it. I can't wait for the next episode. My wife doesn't normally watch scripted television, and she's invested. So where do you think?
So is mine.
Yeah. I mean, she has me watching 90 Day Fiance. That's usually our Sunday night thing. And I watch that with her. But I was like, hey, we're going to have to push 90 Day Fiance back a night because we have True Detective on Sunday nights.
Right.
So what are you thinking? Where do you think this season's headed? What do you think is going on?
Oh man, it's hard to tell since we're kind of just talking about episode 1. Everything is so open-ended right now. I'm not exactly sure if I could make any like ultimate conclusions, but I do think that the scene with the girl who got hit by that guy in the domestic abuse, I think she's going to come into play in the show somehow.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's like a very subtle detail because I don't know why they chose them, you know? And we had like a very long interaction with them. And I think that they were doing some character building there. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen.
That's a good point. I didn't think about like we encountered him on. I think we encountered both of them on 2 occasions.
I think so, yeah.
So that is interesting. You would assume that's not an accident.
I feel like they chose them to be on the screen for a reason. So
yeah, of the like 5,000 people in this town, 5,000 seems high to me.
Yeah, maybe it's 600 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean,
what do you think's going to happen?
So I'm really curious to see how into the fantastic this season goes. So we've already had a ghost, which is kind of new for True Detective territory.
Yes.
The first season I loved because it was super dark, dealing with like ritualistic murders. Almost, it didn't come out and say Satanism. Almost kind of like those satanic panic murders of the early 90s.
Yeah, they were almost like sacrificial.
Yes, and there was ritualistic drawings and all these things going on. So while it wasn't explicitly paranormal, I always kind of lump cults and mystical, all of that stuff is kind of paranormal when it comes to crime, because it's extra normal. It's not a robbery gone bad. It's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like in season 1, when Russ Cole and Marty Hart run up to like where they were cooking the meth out in the middle of nowhere, basically, and then Marty ends up killing that guy. Sorry, spoilers.
Season 1 is 10 years old at this point.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, that's on you.
Right. Yeah, he ends up killing that guy because that guy was like, well, I guess maybe both of them were like raping those kids, you know. But when he's there, he was like kind of like almost like in a very drugged out, weird state, and he starts talking about like the black stars and stuff.
Yeah.
So like I do think there is like some type of aspect to what you're saying, even if they haven't introduced it until now. That's what makes me think they might be wrapping up the show, which would be so sad.
Yeah,
but
I feel like we're hitting our stride in season 4.
I hope so.
It wouldn't be the first. I mean, to be honest, I'm impressed it came back for season 4 because the reviews for 3 were not good. Viewership was down. All of that was down. So I was surprised it came back for 4. I think HBO knows the potential that True Detective has. And
I think so. And HBO will always capitalize on that, which is why I love them as just like a company and a streaming service in general.
Oh, I canceled Netflix and I subscribe to Max only.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Netflix it's kind of weird these days.
It's a thing in the past. But so I do think right now my guess is we're gonna lean into that paranormal even more. This she's awake thing.
Yeah.
This ghost of Travis showing up. The questionable purpose of the research facility. I do think all of those things are going to be related. I I don't know if it's going to be like some ancient evil in the area. I don't know what exactly, but I do think it's not going to be a clear, normal resolution. I think it's going to be something paranormal, something extra normal outside of, hey, it was a love affair gone bad. I don't think that's going to be it. I think we're going to go down the route of something paranormal is going on here. So that's my predictions for the rest of the season.
Right. I gotta be honest. I almost feel like it's gonna be like very paranormal, like hints and aspects of like talking about what Carcosa actually is, because we don't even really get into it in any of the seasons. But this time, like as you mentioned, they're showing us that spiral again. So they're definitely giving us more information about that. But I do think there's going to be like that true detective aspect that they're going to close these cases.
That excites me. I don't.
Me too. I mean, the options are open, right? So it's all open-ended right now.
So this, I think, is that what you have to say about episode 1?
That's what I have to say about episode 1.
Okay.
Yep.
I think I'm about wrapped up on episode 1. We're actually really quickly going to turn around. We're going to have episode 2 recap for you. The goal here is that we're going to talk about the episode. We're going to talk about what we think is going on. This is our first time doing this on the Average Podcast. Like I said, it's normally movies. So we might be a little rough around the edges covering a TV show. We definitely went over the time we wanted for you, but that's okay. I had a good time.
I did as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes,
Seriously.
I'm so glad you could join us. I think right now you're planning to be here for every episode, right?
That's the plan.
Awesome. And then we have some other guests who will be dropping in to talk about the show as well. And I'm looking forward to having you hear them, hear their thoughts on it. I'm not going to tell you too much about who they are just in case scheduling fails. But the plan is to have episode 2 drop the day or the morning of episode 3's release. So you can listen to our episode 2 recap to get you ready to watch episode 3. Same episode 3 will drop before the official episode 4. So our episode 3 recap will be released before episode 4 premieres so that you can get caught up, hear our thoughts. We want to hear your thoughts. So if you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, comment your thoughts. Let us know what's going on, what you think is going on. The Average has always been about people's interaction. So we want to hear what's going on and what you think is happening. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. We will see you very shortly with episode 2.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
And now we return you to our regular scheduled program, In Progress.
I want to tell you a little bit about Zencastr. When I was preparing for our 13 Nights of Halloween series, I was really searching for a way to streamline the process. I wanted a professional-looking setup to invite our guests to. I wanted quality audio and video recording, and I wanted the easiest way to release the episodes to as broad of an audience as possible. This is how I landed on Zencastr. It is now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Just log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. And speaking of audio quality, have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you're thinking of starting your own podcast or just want to streamline what you are already doing, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code AVERAGECUSTOMER and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. That's Average Customer, one word. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.